Well, with us in studio is Brad White, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation. Brad, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And you know this, but the audience doesn't. Brad's a dear old friend. I've known Brad since Haley Barbour's campaign back in 2003, so it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Well, tell us a little bit about how the last year has been at the Department of Transportation.
We had a good year. The commissioners were able to award a record number of contracts. We let the contract over $964 million worth of road and bridge projects.
Wow.
That's about an 80% increase from the average of the previous 5 years. A lot of that is due to the efficiency of our staff and making sure we obligate all the federal money that's made available to us. The legislature gave us complete flexibility within that federal program. So our staff did a really good job of maximizing the use of the different buckets of federal dollars that we have. But also thanks to Senator Roger Wicker, Congressman Benny Thompson, and others in our delegation, the Federal Highway Administration with the IIJA had an extra $1 billion in it over the next 5 years. And thanks to our legislative leadership, we received about another $225 million to supplement the federal program. So all of those things combined, it allowed us to go a little further than what we had anticipated in the way of road projects.
Yeah, y'all are sort of funny in that sense. I feel like any other government agency, if nobody else would brag about how much money they're spending, but y'all, when you're spending money, you're directly improving the quality of the roads people are running on.
Mississippi taxpayers have about $65 billion worth of investment in an existing transportation system around the state. And so we obviously want to protect that investment and enhance that investment, and that takes money. But every dollar that we spend has a direct economic impact, into the community around us. So it's good when MDOT's putting money out to the streets and the roads.
And none of that's new roads. I mean, this is all sort of retopping, taking care of what we got, or
for the most part right now. But actually, due to the extra funding that we got from the federal government. And some from the state legislature as well, the commission was able to end what was, for all intents and purposes, a moratorium on capacity projects that would be adding lanes and bypasses and things like that would add to the efficiency of our system. And we have about several projects across the state that we're bringing off the drawing board and beginning the pre-construction phases to, that hopefully we'll be able to bring to construction in the coming years, that will add lanes to highways, build bypasses, do other things that, like I said, will add efficiency to the system. Right now we have only 3 of those that we have construction dollars aligned for and that are ready for construction. One is the Greenville Bypass in the Central District. The other one's Highway 57 and the Southern District in Jackson County, that's highway evacuation that we just let the contract, where we'll be adding lanes and a good deal of construction there. And then early part of next year, we'll let the contract portion of Highway 15 in Union County for the same type of work. And beyond that, we have a lot of projects from the Tennessee line to the Gulf Coast where we're doing pre-engineering, pre-construction type of work, getting ready to bring them to construction.
Do we have a lot of areas in the state that are underserved by the existing roads? I mean, where you need a four-lane highway and don't, or where you need a road at all and nothing exists?
About 20 years ago, the legislature amended the 87 four-lane program with a law called Vision 21, and in it they placed what I would call data-driven processes that the commission must follow in order to place a project on the list of being a needed capacity project. And that list, if you added up the cost of that list today, we've got about $6 billion worth of needs that are recognized around the state that could be used to enhance the system that we've got. Due to the lack of funding, there was about a 10-year period of time where the commission was not letting contracts of that kind and was strictly rehabilitating and taking care of the existing system. But fortunately, in the last couple of years, we've been able to move away from that, and we're investing about $220 million a year now and trying to get ready to address that list of projects like what you're talking about.
Okay. And how, I mean, I know I hadn't seen a lot of discussion lately about increasing the gas tax, but I know that was a major push at one point that people felt like we needed to in order to get adequate funding for roads. I mean, how is the funding for all the projects you've got at MDOT?
Well, I guess I'm a little weird when we talk about the gas tax and being someone at MDOT, in that I haven't really believed that we needed to push to raise the fuel tax. I think that's been a topic because that's primarily the sole source of funding that the Department of Transportation has received over the years, and it is a user tax. And when we have had funding problems like those I was just mentioning that inhibited the Commission's ability to address the needs around the state. Some believe that since it had been 30 years since that had been adjusted, it was time to do that. I'm of the opinion that with the growth of electric and hybrid vehicles, with the more efficient nature of vehicles today as opposed to 30 years ago, that we're in desperate need of having a conversation about how we're going to fund this core function of government. And I think it's going to have to be something more than or in addition to the fuel tax. And I think there are ways you can do that without raising people's taxes, but we must start having that conversation now, because this is a core function of government, as we've said, and to not have the funds there to maintain it and to continue to enhance it would be detrimental to the people of the state. But I think the way that we've been funded in the past, I don't think is sustainable long term.
That makes a lot of sense. But you think that's a conversation that needs to be had?
I think it needs to be had now, because I don't know if that's 10 years in the future or 20 years in the future. But at some point in the future, I believe that the fuel tax model is going to be inadequate.
Well, y'all are, it's not obvious to everybody, but I suspect y'all are one of the state, most people don't interact with state government on a regular basis, but even though folks aren't talking to MDOT, they're interacting with the roads that y'all build and maintain more or less every day. So I suspect you get an earful from people as you go around about both condition and needs.
Well, unfortunately, what we have to do when you're building a road or a bridge in a populated area, there's no way to do it without bringing some level of disruption and interference to the people that have to go through there. We try to mitigate that, obviously, as best as we can, but anytime you're having to replace a bridge that's out, or you're having construction, you do it in the middle of where people are trying to drive. There's no way to do that without a little bit of disruption, and some people are more patient than others, but we hear from a lot of folks that help us know what we could do better.
Well, and I would imagine you hear from some folks who want you to know where they think that you need a 4-lane or a new road or something.
Right.
Just looking at the C Spire text line, I'm getting lots of folks here who want you to know different places in the state that need to be 4-lane.
I trust that to be the case.
Well, Brad, what has it been like for you to be back at MDOT? Because that's in a lot of ways sort of your first job in state government was at MDOT, wasn't it?
Yeah, when Commissioner Hall was appointed by Kirk Fordyce back in the 90s, he provided me an opportunity to come on his personal staff there. And at that time, the commission was located on the 10th floor. And for somebody in their mid-20s to come to work at a place where you had all of these career folks, engineers and otherwise, that were made up the leadership of the agency, fine Christian people. It was a really impactful time in my life to be around them and to learn public service from people like Commissioner Hall and others, and to have the opportunity to go back has been real nostalgic. But I enjoy it. One thing that's not changed is quality of the people. We have some of the best folks in the world that work with the Department of Transportation from the 10th floor all the way throughout the agency. When you get out into the district, the people that I regard as our first responders, I mean, these are people that during ice storms, we've had folks that actually walk to work because they couldn't get their vehicle away from their home in order to get on the equipment to go do the things necessary to make it to where folks could travel. We've had employees that delivered children on the side of the road from a pregnant mother, saved folks from burning vehicles. I mean, we've just got top-notch folks across the board, and it's been real nice to be back involved in an organization like that.
And it's been now, what, a year and a half that you've been back at the head of MDOT?
July 1st of 21 was when I started back.
Well, hated to see Dick Hall's death. I know y'all were close, and he was a good public servant.
Yeah, but what a long career.
Absolutely.
I mean, he and Senator Cochran both kind of were able to do it the right way. They had the opportunity and were blessed to have a long career in public service, to have an impactful career, do a lot of good for their neighbors, and then it seemed like when the time for their career came to an end, it was about the time the Lord called them home.
Yeah,
so
no, that's exactly
the way to go
right.
with your boots on.
Had a long, successful career and did a lot of good in that time.
That's right.
You got time to stick around for another segment?
Sure.
Well, this is Lucien Smith in for Paul Gallo here on the Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk Mississippi. Stick with us for more with Brad White from the Mississippi Department of Transportation. I see. Well, here with my friend Brad White, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Transportation. Brad, we were talking a little bit earlier, as we get ready for the 23 legislative session, what are y'all's, what is MDOT looking to do this legislative session?
Well, first would be to do no harm. The legislature was extremely good to infrastructure in this past session. I would argue that it was the best session that MDOT's had since the year that the 87 four-lane program was adopted. And I attribute all of that to Governor Hosemann and Speaker Gunn and Appropriations Committee Chairman, and especially people like Senator Branning and Chairman Busby in the House that came together with us. They had an open door policy. Anything that we needed, we were able to get in front of them, and we had real dialogue, which I thought was helpful and needed between the department and the legislature. But it resulted in us having an earmark-free federal program, which gave us complete flexibility in how we maximize those dollars. And then they gave us supplemental funds for our paving and maintenance, our capacity. They gave us the extra money needed to put forth the match for the additional federal dollars, along with another $100 million in emergency road and bridge repair projects that were spent totally on the local systems around the state. So it was a good session for infrastructure, and hopefully that'll be a baseline from which we can, or on which we can build. As we said earlier, at some point, and I hope sooner rather than later, we will begin the conversation about reoccurring revenue that we can count on, and the type of revenue that's necessary in order to plan these different highway projects, because they happen over a period of years from inception to construction. Takes sometimes 6 to 8 years, and then construction out. So having a stream of revenue that we can count on is needed in order for us to properly plan. And as we said, I'm not so sure that the fuel tax will be a sustainable form of that revenue. So having that conversation sooner rather than later, I think, is vital and something that we'll see.
Do you have a specific idea of what you would do to replace that, or do you think it's just clear that's going to be a decreasing source of revenue?
Well, I think that there's a couple of things that they could do. Some states are going to miles traveled, another type of a user fee. I think reevaluating the hybrid and electric vehicle fees or something. We've looked at a system to where we would kind of mock the federal government and setting up a highway trust fund where, kind of like the rainy day fund, when the economy is good and we're hitting certain metrics, that a percentage of the revenue is diverted to a highway trust fund that can draw interest and be used for that. I think there's a lot of different ideas that can be talked about, and I think the answer may lie in multiple things, that we can do that would provide the revenue needed, but do so in a financially responsible way that would have as little negative impact as possible on the public.
Yeah, which makes sense, because the sense I got when there was discussion of just raising the fuel tax was there was some pretty significant political headwinds to doing that. Whether it's a good idea or not, people were not eager to see gas prices go up.
Right, and you're right. One is politically, when things are high at the pump now is not the time to even have that type of debate. But two, I don't know that over time that you can raise the fuel tax enough to come up with the funds necessary to take care of the system we've got and continue to build upon it.
Because people are going further and further on
Sure.
a gallon of gas, and
that's exactly right. Right now, think about it like this: the miles of roadway that we have to maintain, not the new roads that we're building or widening, but what we maintain now. You could take that miles, go completely around the earth, and still have enough miles left to build a highway from Jackson to Honolulu.
Huh.
That's what
Mississippi roads.
Just Mississippi.
Wow.
Highways and interstates. That's what Mississippi takes care of now. We have a $65 billion investment that we have to protect and to maintain. And that's before you get to the $6 billion list of identified projects that are potential 4 lanes and other types of capacity projects that would enhance the efficiency and safety of the system and provide for economic development opportunities and other things like that you want to have as a part of the formula when we're talking about our transportation system.
Now, looking at the commission, I know Commissioner King is retiring.
That's right.
Is that right? But your other 2 commissioners, have they announced that they're running for re-election?
I believe they both have. I've not been told otherwise. Commissioner King has been there now for 12 years. Honorable guy. whatever he's thinking, you know where you stand with him. He's honest and upfront. That's somewhat of a dying breed in politics, unfortunately. And he and his leadership will be greatly missed, but wish he and his family the best, and looking forward to seeing who would take his place and what that would bring to the commission. Other than that, I don't expect a lot of change on the commission. I don't think we've had a transportation commissioner defeated in office since 1967.
Huh.
We've had a few go to prison during that time period, but we've not had any defeated at the ballot box since then. But he will be missed greatly, he and his leadership.
Yeah, no, but Tom's a great guy, and good for him that he's gotten to the point where he's ready to retire. But I hate that for the commission.
Well, it's kind of like we were talking about Commissioner Hall. I mean, Commissioner King has a total of probably about 32 years of public service, because he, as you know, was both in the House and the Senate before ever having a long career on the Transportation Commission. So he's due a good rest.
Well, I suspect, like everybody who works for a commission, you don't get involved in any of the politics, but do you know who's running for Commissioner King's seat? Is that if people gotten into the race?
Charles Busby, who's chairman of the House Transportation Committee, has announced. We enjoy a great working relationship with him. His leadership from the House perspective has been phenomenal, and that's the only name that I've heard of officially, but that's not to say that others aren't considering.
Yeah, they've got till February 1st to formally get in the race.
Right.
But, Brad, you've had, shifting gears, just a fascinating career, being chairman of the party, executive director of the Republican Party, chief of staff to governors and senators.
You can't hold a job.
How many were on the RNC during leadership elections? Or
I was there the year we elected Michael Steele.
Okay.
And I was there the year we elected Reince Priebus.
What are those environments like? I mean, what is?
Well, I mean, you know what they're like. But I was there in the absence of a president, so it was a free for all.
Yeah, I was only ever there when we had a president, so it was I voted, but it wasn't a terribly contested election.
Well, this was a free for all that would take all day. You would have multiple candidates, and you would just keep voting until enough people dropped out that one person was able to win with a majority of the vote. So it would take all day to do that. So it was fun. It was exhilarating. After a little while, you'd get tired of listening to speeches and sitting on the floor. I would. But it was a lot of fun, and I was glad that I had the opportunity to do that. I don't think I'd want to sit through another one.
It sounds like this one's going to be contentious.
I would expect so. Again, no president in the White House. It's purely the will of the committee. You have a chairman that's going for something that's unprecedented, and as far as the number of terms, and I think that it will be a long day of vote tallying.
She's got the list that she says she's got 100 supporters, which I don't have any reason to think that's not true. I mean, do you have any sense of whether that'll forestall having a real election? I mean, could she win I guess she could win on the first ballot.
Well, I mean, I guess the question is whether or not that if she can build upon that. If that's not a majority, I mean, after about the third ballot, you start seeing people fall off of someone if they see that they're not
start coalescing around.
And so that's, I think, the hill that she's got to climb. As you well know, I've been rather unplugged the last few years from all of that. My observation has been she's been very supportive of the Mississippi Republican Party, and
I think that's right.
Good to our state. So I would anticipate that would continue if she were to remain chairman. But I don't even know who I was running against her.
I'm not sure either. I mean, Harmeet Dillon is the one who I think's the closest competitor, who's the California National Committee woman and kind of a prominent lawyer who's on Fox a fair amount. But I believe there's still time for other people to get in the race. I know Mike Lindell, the MyPillow founder, is running, but I wouldn't anticipate him being a particularly competitive candidate there.
Well, you never say never in politics. But keep in mind, they'll not only be electing the chairman, but the co-chairman, a treasurer. There's other offices that'll be up. So it will be a long day for the members.
I didn't even think about all the other offices that are up that day.
The same process.
Well, it's gonna be interesting. Well, Brad, I appreciate you spending time with us. Any final thoughts before we head out?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas
to you.
Appreciate
all you do.
Thanks for all the good work you and the folks at MDOT do.
Thank you.
Well, y'all, this is Lucien Smith in for Paul Gallo here on the Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk, Mississippi.